Is it water with the sheep in the box?
Hello, welcome to this thing, what I'm doing with my friend. Do you want me to use your real name? I guess you use your name on your actual podcast.
Yeah, you can use my government name, it's fine.
Your government name. Okay, so with my friend Aidan from the wonderful podcast Kino Inferno.
Yeah, the artist formerly known as Henchbrain 666.
Yeah, the artist formerly known as Henchbrain 666. If anyone's seen our wonderful live streams that we did that really upset well-known internet racist Smudboy.
Yeah, I want to just clear something up before we get into the meat of today's topic.
Yeah.
Because on those live streams, and I went back to make sure we had said this, I think I say pretty early on that I don't think Smudboy is a racist. I'd like to rescind that comment, given that in the intervening years since we made that live stream, he has come out as quite the racist. So,
yes, he has. He's well known as he's known as Smudboy the racist, I believe nowadays.
Yeah,
that's
even Mauler called him racist. So it's getting.
Yeah, you've crossed the line then.
When Mauler will take a stance on a person, you've crossed the line. So yeah, I'd like to apologise to the racist community for denying that Smudboy was a member of them. I now recognise his contributions towards the global effort of racism.
Okay, right. Well, that aside, today we're here to I guess it's sort of like a promo of your podcast, but mostly we're just here to talk about a terrible film that I'm one of the only people that knows exists.
Yes.
And so we're just gonna have a fun time, just sort of chatting about a terrible film, and I'm probably going to put some visuals in, not of our faces because that would be a bit weird. I'm looking at your face currently, but no one else can see that.
I'm looking at your face too. Just throwing that out there.
Okay, well, that good. All right, so I guess let's talk about. First of all, let's talk about Kino Inferno. Tell us about your wonderful podcast and why people should subscribe to it and follow it and listen to it.
Why people should subscribe to it is open to debate. But Kino Inferno, that's Kino and then the word Inferno, is a podcast I started with an old friend of mine, an old collaborator, a guy called Mark. We met at uni and we've made films and stuff together, blah, blah, blah. The point is, now, this might blow your mind, people who are listening to this, and also Matt. The concept of this podcast is two white guys who are closing in on 30 discuss movies. I know, it's a novel concept. There are no podcasts like that, so we thought we'd corner the market. But no, the spin that we do put on it is that we discuss two movies that are linked usually by a tenuous theme. So in our very first episode, we had the theme of, oh god, what was it called? It was like man babies or man children or something like this. And the film that I provided was This Is Spinal Tap, and the film that Mark provided was With Nail and I, and we kind of discussed the similarities, the differences, blah blah blah. But it's not as boring as that sounds. There's a lot of jokes, a lot of knob gags, a lot of off-kilter conversation in general.
Yeah, I think my favourite part was, my favourite episode was the time you went on a 3-hour rant about the film Twats, not Twats, Cats from 2019.
Yeah. So one of our episodes, we discussed Cats for roughly an entire year. And, weirdly, that's one of our more popular episodes. So people might want to start with that one. But you know,
it's weirdly, I think it's just like genuinely very funny, like seeing you two just sort of like talking, especially to see you just properly go off the rails talking about a terrible film about sexy cats.
Yeah. It's an outlet for mental illness, this podcast. It really is. But
okay.
Yeah, so we've done an entire season of this nonsense. There are some bonus episodes and stuff as well. I should also say, at the end of discussion of each film, we decide whether the film is Kino, which is film bro speak for a good film, or Inferno, which means we're going to chuck it in a big fire. I will say the binary rating system has gotten quite convoluted as time's gone on, because we've had certain entries which are like, it's going in the Inferno, but we're going to take it out of the box and just throw the box in and save the disc in a shameful corner of the cupboard or something like that. So,
well, I mean, when you think about it, the film binary is a social construct, really. So, I mean...
Yes. We're a non-binary podcast in many senses. Not in the senses that the hosts are non-binary, but our thinking is non-binary often.
Okay.
I'll say that. But also, just listen to the fucking podcast. I don't know what to tell you. Find it.
Okay. Fair enough. Right, yeah, so I guess so to give us...
You should have got Mark on, really. You should have got Mark on. He's better at promoting things.
Okay. Well, I mean, if I'm happy to have another conversation, and we can bring Mark on if you want. Mark seems like a nice guy. I've never spoken to him personally.
He's a terrible cunt behind closed doors.
Okay. Well, fair enough.
And a racist.
I don't know what to say about that. Okay.
No, he's not. He's lovely. He's good.
Okay. Fair enough. Right. Well, I guess by means of sort of giving people a taste of what your podcast is like, I thought we'd sort of do a version of it on this channel and sort of funnel people your way, because I think it's the sort of thing that more people should be listening to. 'Cause, to be honest, I genuinely think your podcast is like incredibly good, and it needs more people to listen to it. So I would urge everyone to go and do so. And in the meantime, we're going to talk about one terrible film rather than two. So it may be slightly shorter than your 3-hour epic about cats.
Well, you say that now.
Oh yeah, well there is a lot to get into with this film, but I guess let's just sort of start, shall we? So we're talking about the film Death in VENTNOR, which is a film I made a video about like in the first couple of months of having a YouTube channel, so no one saw it basically. And it is an interesting film. How would you describe it? This piece of cinema.
Well, I'd have to say, Matt, I'd never heard of this film until you said, let's do a thing on my YouTube channel about Death in VENTNOR, as if that was a film that people would know. Like, you said that as if I would know what that was, and I was like, okay, sure. And then you kind of thrust a DVD into my hands, and I was like, righto. And if you can flash up an image of the DVD cover at this point, editor Matt.
Yes.
It's an incredibly cheap-looking box, I think we can all agree. But I think that advertises the contents of the film pretty well, because
I think my favourite part is the fact that rather than just being like an actual portrait picture, it seems to be like a picture they've taken in landscape and then stretched it out so it fits the box. Yeah,
and it's clearly. I mean, I was surprised that the disc within didn't have the title written on with a marker pen, like it is actually a printed disc. But clearly, the artwork sleeve for the box was printed by, I assume, the director, who is also the producer and one of the actors.
Yes, although he has a different name as an actor than he does as a producer. I don't know if you noticed that.
Now, this did interest me, because when you said it's the same bloke, I was like, but it's two different names. And then I didn't want to do too much research, because you implied that you had a lot of knowledge about this film. So I was kind of like, well, I'm just going to react to it as, as a film connoisseur, as a critic and a filmmaker, and you can provide me with some background details that I might have missed. So the first thing I want to say, Matt, or the first thing I want to ask you is, how on God's earth did you come across this movie? Because the modicum of research I did, I typed Death in VENTNOR into Google, just to aid with my note-making process, so I was making sure I was getting names right and stuff. And only the first two results are about this film.
I was also going to say that I did Google Death in VENTNOR as well, and like I found some stuff, and like I saved some stuff when I made a video about it like ages and ages ago. But yeah, if you Google it, like what comes up, and I've bookmarked it. Is VENTNOR dies after being hit by a Range Rover whilst crossing main road.
Yes, which is not relevant to the film.
No, there is like I think 4 things about it. So you got the trailer. You have to go digging for some stuff. But yeah, there's like an interview the director did with some local.
Yeah, now this I saw. Yeah.
Yeah.
I read
But yeah,
it,
so basically, the way I came across this is I happened to be on the Isle of Wight in Ventnor, as it turns out. I guess for our American and just our viewers or listeners or whatever, we should probably point out Ventnor is a small town on the Isle of Wight, which is a small island inhabited mostly by like old people. I don't know how sort of weird old people. I guess you could sort of say it's like the Florida of the UK.
Yeah, in a roundabout sense. It's not quite as and you'll have to forgive me if there's any Floridian listeners, but it's not quite got the trashy reputation that Florida has necessarily. But it's like a quiet coastal sort of place, right? Like Ventnor. I mean, I've never been to the Isle. I've never been to the Isle of Wight, so I wouldn't know.
So it's on the south coast of the UK. It's sort of it's basically the sort of place that rich old people retire to. Yeah. And it's also got some weird people. Like as an example, one time when I was on holiday on the Isle of Wight with my parents as a child, we once went into a shop, and they had those you can't even say what they're called. Those like golly dolls from the 70s that were incredibly racist. I'll just put up a picture here for people who don't know. And underneath the shelf of them, there was a sign that said, "These are not racist. They're from Noddy or something." So that's the sort of place we're looking at. Just sort of elderly, eccentric people.
There is a real subculture of old British people who don't want to let that particular toy die.
It's full of those sorts of people, and like, there are some normal people there as well, but it's like, there's a lot of people there, and it's sort of generally considered to be like 20 years behind the rest of the UK, I think, culturally.
Yeah, which, bearing in mind that most of the UK is like 30 years behind the rest of the world, it's saying like, something.
Yeah, we've barely moved out of the, when was 50 years ago? 70s? Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's how numbers work. You did a maths. Well done.
I did a maths. I'm good at doing maths. So I was on holiday in the Isle of Wight in Ventnor because it's a nice like seaside town. It's quite cheap.
Yeah, and there's a lot of dogging down there, I'd imagine. So that's probably what drew you.
Maybe. I mean, this was a few years ago. But yeah, I actually saw it. Well, my parents saw it at the premiere of this film, which was in like some local cinema in Ventnor. And like, after the premiere, they were flogging DVDs, and my parents obviously were like, "Oh, Matt's studying film at uni. Like, he'll probably like this weird shit." So they bought the DVD.
I just want to point out that is the sign of a successful premiere, if they're flogging the DVD at the premiere. So, usually there's a space of a few months between the premiere and it being available on home release, rather than if you come to the boot of the director's car, I've got 150 of them for sale.
But yeah, they were selling the DVDs at the end of the premiere, and obviously they picked one up for me, and I've kept it ever since, and I've shown it to as many people as I possibly can, because it's the weirdest and funniest movie I've ever seen, and obviously no one else has ever seen it, because we might get into this, but like it's almost been scrubbed from the internet. So I don't know if you probably didn't, but like Utility Films, which is the company that made the film.
Yes.
They don't offer it anywhere online. You can't buy the DVD. You can't get it digitally. You can't like do anything with it.
Now I sort of do know this actually, Matt. Or I suspected this was the case because I've been very busy this weekend. Obviously, I had to borrow your DVD of this, and I was like, oh shit, I don't know if Matt's going to have time to watch this DVD. I don't know if we're going to both have time to watch the physical DVD. So I looked for... Well, first of all, I tried to burn it and destroyed a CD drive. That's another story for another day. So,
okay, right.
So I've been through a lot for this movie. But and then I tried to torrent it, and it does not exist, which you shouldn't... I mean, on Minecraft. I tried to torrent it on Minecraft.
Of course, yeah.
And you can't find it anywhere. And normally, even fairly obscure things, even like, you know, Sharktopus versus Megacroc, you can find a torrent of it somewhere, or someone has put it somewhere on the internet. But Death in Ventnor, nowhere to be found.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing. So, like, back when I first made a video about it, obviously I had like 100 subscribers or something. But like, I actually I sort of Facebook messaged the like Utility Films and was like, I really want to get a copy of this to share with people because like, I genuinely, unironically love this movie because it's like even that. Like, I didn't say because it's bad. I was like, I really love this movie. It's great. And he basically told me, no, we've moved on. We're not doing that anymore. So like,
right.
Yeah, I think the director just sort of doesn't really want to acknowledge it, really, which is sad, I think, because there's some good stuff in here. It's an interesting
that interview that you can find with him. He seems to be quite proud of it. Like, he's talking about how audiences have responded. Well, what audiences have seen it have responded well to it, and all this kind of stuff. So that's surprising. I wonder what happened there.
Well, it seems like what's happened is the Utility Films have actually just gone on to make like documentaries and sort of small local films. They did do like a weird conspiracy theory thing where they interviewed some doctor who reckoned that antidepressants were causing the downfall of society or something.
Right. Okay. Sure.
But yeah, most of the time, nowadays they just get like funding from local government bodies to do like filming work and stuff. And the filmmaking in the new stuff is relatively good. Like he's got access to a drone now.
Yeah.
And they do. Yeah, so like their new sort of documentary style stuff is good, but this is the only foray into what I would call proper filmmaking.
Yeah,
proper storytelling.
Yeah, feature film, because it is feature length, and boy, does it feel feature length by the time you get to the end. Yeah, so it's a respectable 95 minutes, but God, I mean, it's a long 95 minutes.
Here's a good question for you. How much do you think this film cost to make?
Well, I'm glad you asked this, Matt, because I do actually know this. Because this was in the interview that I read with the director, whose name escapes me. Okay. But okay, I want to just say though, the thing that's notable about that is I was watching this with my long-suffering partner. Long-suffering, by which I mean has to watch a lot of shit films because I do a podcast. And regularly says things like, "Why are you doing this to yourself? Are you okay? Is this a cry for help?" But
oh dear.
And you know, I didn't really have an answer for her when it came to Death in Ventnor. But as we were watching it, she said, "How much do you think they spent on this film?" And as a ballpark figure, which I didn't completely pull out of my ass, because this is how much my short film Night of the Screamer, also available on YouTube, cost to make. Was £2,000. So I went, well, I spent about £2,000 on Night of the Screamer, and I estimate that's about what they spent on this, right? Because it looks significantly worse than that. but is longer, if you see what I mean. So I was kind of like,
so it's stretched out over a long period. Yeah.
And when I found this interview with the director, it seems to be that was a spot-on figure, because the figure he quotes as the budget was £2,000. So
yeah.
So and bear in mind, like on my short film, he also didn't pay any of the actors, which I will say, you know, it's sometimes just an inevitability of making independent films, is that you don't have the money to pay actors and all the rest of it. What I've always done in that situation is, well, first of all, I've only really made short films, so it's a bit more acceptable to say, can you do this for a weekend for no money rather than, you know, for months on end. But the other thing is, you know, I've always paid people's travel expenses, which is where most of the budget for my short film went, right? It's just getting people here and there and paying for their food and stuff, and like most of it was on expenses. The film itself probably cost significantly less than £2,000 to make, but overall, as a production, it cost £2,000. So I'm interested to know, and we'll probably never know this if he's shunning Death in Ventnor. I'd love to know the cost breakdowns of this film, because watching it, I'm kind of like, I don't think they paid for anything they used in this film.
It does seem like it's just sort of all their mates, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, because certainly there's no actors in this. Or at least there's no actors who do it as a profession, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who plays Billy, for example, is a bank manager, which probably tells you.
Yeah, and he gives the performance of a bank manager rather than an actor, I would say. Shall we get into the plot of this movie? Because I think we can discuss the eccentricities of its production as we go over the plot. And I'm going to need you to walk me through this, Matt, because I've only seen this once. And I'll be real with you. I can clearly remember the start, and I can fairly clearly remember the end. But the middle is a kind of blur of somewhat random, inconsequential events that occurred.
Yes, that's about accurate. Just to give you probably like the best summary, I can just read you the blurb on the back of the DVD if you'd like.
Yeah, why the fuck not?
So first off, we've got the amazing tagline, which is a post office robbery, a quantity of missing ecstasy, a lobster called Derek.
Yeah, I forgot about the quantity. There's something so funny about the wording of a quantity of missing ecstasy. So
yeah, why not like a shipment or like a... I don't know, I don't do many drugs.
Or just... There's a fucking lie. Yeah, but why not just put like 200 grams worth of ecstasy or something like that? Or put like 10,000 pounds of missing ecstasy. Like you don't.
It's not even that. It's like £4,000. Like, it's very low stakes, right. Really.
Yeah, maybe that's why they put a quantity, because they thought putting 4,000 would be like. I forgot they put a number on it in the movie. Yeah, they do say £4,000, don't they? But
right.
Yeah. I mean, sorry. Go on with the box description.
Okay, so this is just sort of a vague summary of the. Of the story. So we've got ex-con Colin, brackets Lewis George, who is the same person as David George, who is the director, with his newly released cellmate Billy, played by Wayne Child, resolved to rob a small Isle of Wight post office with unexpected results. A ghastly cocktail of dead social workers, insulin dependency, and clumsy criminality, Death in Ventnor is a dark comedy with nice scenery and some rather unpleasant language. Not a film for the entire family, unless they happen to be particularly dysfunctional.
Okay.
Then there's a couple of...
You'll notice how you'll notice how this sounds like a real blurb for a real film.
Yeah, it says contains strong language, violence, but no sex. In brackets. Sorry. There's two quotes from the two places that reviewed it. So we've got from offscreen.com, invokes the great Ealing comedies, a film with a true independent spirit that shines through every pore of its digital fibre. Sure. And we've got from Ventnor blog, extremely gifted first feature, a highly versatile work that's rapidly developing a cult following. Okay, is that true? I don't think there's a cult following for this movie. I think the cult following is you, Matt. Like, it's just you. Yeah. Unironically, I think I'm the only person who still remembers this film exists. And if there's anyone else out there, please get in contact with me, because I think we need to be friends. I mean, if this video gains enough traction that we can make Death in Ventnor into a cult comedy, into a cult film, that would be incredible. But I mean, I guess it's kind of like if the what are they called, utility films? If they're trying to bury it, or they're trying to not be associated with it anymore, they are kind of missing a trick, because they could go full Tommy Wiseau and lean into the cult angle. I was thinking that, yeah, because I genuinely think a lot of people would love this movie if they were to see it. It is better than The Room. Like that's you can put that on the box if you do a reprint of it. It is better than The Room. And I agree. I love The Room, but this has a plot that more or less makes sense. Like, there's an A to B. Admittedly, I would say the second act of this film is basically just people going in and out of a car and in and out of various buildings. But I understand what they're vaguely trying to do, whereas The Room, it makes no sense and is carnage from start to finish. Yeah, for sure. And I think we actually did say off mic that there are some genuinely good jokes in this that are actually very funny, but that are sort of wasted in this film. I think the script is honestly the strongest aspect of this film, and I'm saying that without irony. I think, with some actual actors, or at least some people who could, deliver lines slightly more convincingly. Because that's the thing, you don't have to be a particularly good actor to have comic timing. It's just like, there's a lot of deliveries in this movie where
I do find myself wondering, do the actors realise that this line is a joke? Because they're not delivering it as a joke. Do you know what I mean by that? They're just kind of saying it blankly. And I'm like, after a couple of minutes after they said it, I go, oh, that's actually quite funny. But then you realise, like one of my favourite lines of this, we'll kind of get into the plot a bit more in a minute. But as an example of what I mean, one of the best lines in this for me, there's a gangster character called Harry, who's sort of the big, the big kingpin relative to Ventnor, right? And he's kind of an eccentric guy, is the thing. But he has a line.
Best character and best actor, I reckon. In the movie.
I would agree. But even he stumbles over quite a lot of his lines, because there's one which I wrote down as one of my favourites, where he's saying to the guy who's, ripped off the quantity of ecstasy from him, that he's got 7 days to give him his money, right? And he goes, you could do a lot in 7 days. I mean, look at God. And that's quite a funny line, but he delivers it so weirdly that it's like, wait, what? Like, does this actor know that he's, like, doing a bit there? Like, what's going on? I don't understand.
Like, honestly, the whole performance of that character is off the rails, and I fucking love it.
You can do a lot in 7 days. I mean, look at God.
Yeah.
The way he says that line is incredible.
He is the guy in the Amdram society who always gets the pantomime villain. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's the guy where they're like,
100%.
Where they're like, look, he'll just go on, he'll be weird, and it'll be fine. We don't need to direct him, he'll just sort of do whatever. Because that's clearly the attitude they had in this movie. Because if anyone directed that performance, I don't know how they did, because it's so bizarre. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. We should start from the start of the plot. Matt, take us through it. Scene 1.
Okay.
Act 1. Go.
Okay, right. Well, I mean, first off, we've got Billy, played by Wayne Child, getting released from prison. They don't have the shot where he's released from prison, presumably because they couldn't afford that bit.
Couldn't afford a prison, no.
No, but basically it's just a bald man on a train. He arrives in Southampton, which is where I went to uni. It is fine as a city.
Quick question, though. Do we think they secured the permits required to film on this train? Or do we think they just turned the camera on and hoped they wouldn't get caught? Yes,
I think that's exactly what happened. Because there's a bit... it's sort of weird because the character Billy looks a bit like he's supposed to look a bit dodgy because I've just been released from prison or whatever. We'll get into the weird attitudes this film has towards certain groups of people, but it seems to. We will get into that because this film has some interesting views.
But
he's obviously looking around, looking shifty, and I have to wonder how much of that was just because they really weren't supposed to be filming on this train.
Yeah.
Although to be fair, the film does look like it's mostly filmed in 360p. So I mean,
yeah.
It could just be that someone was filming it on their 2009 iPhone or something.
Yeah, I'd love to see the setup they used to film this because, yeah, as you say, was it filmed with just the 1 pixel? Was it filmed on a potato? When did you say this was made? 2009?
2009, I think, yeah.
Okay. So, shot in 2009. So, okay, so, they could be using a Canon SLR, but if they are, they don't know what they're doing with it, is my takeaway from that. Because this movie is barely white balanced, is one thing. It's the thing is, the shot choices are not all terrible. So clearly someone has a decent eye for shots and what a film should look like. The problem is they don't seem to have a lighting setup of any kind. They seem to be mostly using natural light, which is a choice you can make, but also if you're doing that, try to make your shooting day easier by not taking hours and hours and hours so there's different light levels in the same scene. That would be advisable.
Yeah, I think this what this screamed to me is that this is the first attempt of someone to make a film, and they decided to skip past any of the easier options and just go straight to a feature length gangster film rather than making any shorter films.
That's definitely the impression that I got, because it feels like a student film in the worst possible sense.
It feels like a student film, except it's made by a 50-year-old man.
Yeah. because that's the thing. Because with student films, what you often get is you'll get filmmakers who are their reach is exceeding their grasp. Like they're trying to do too much, but you can kind of see what they were going for, and maybe there's some nice shots, some nice lighting, some nice editing. This film kind of, it definitely has the attitude of a middle-aged man being like, fuck it, that'll do, for a lot of the scenes. And this train sequence that we open with is a key example of this, where the shots are just nothing for the most part. Like we get a close-up of Billy, we get some shots of, him just sitting on the train, but it's not like, there's no information being added. There's no artistic kind of flair to it. It's just, boom, wide shot, boom, close up, boom, he's getting off the train. And it's like, okay, sure. And all the while, this terrible, like, emo pop punk song is playing over the soundtrack. And I hope you like terrible emo indie rock from the UK, because fuck me, you're getting 10 more of them. From the same band, by the way. The same band.
I was going to say, is it the same song? But it's the same band, is it, but different songs?
Yes, I think they're different songs. The band is called Waiting for Sirens. I assume they're local, because I don't know why else they would have been chosen for this project, because the music doesn't fit with the tone at all.
Right, let's have a look. Waiting for Sirens. So you continue to talk.
No, I will leave only dead air whilst you Google as we record. No, but you know what I mean? Like, it's very like... I mean, when I say terrible indie emo from the late 2000s, I hope your audience is old enough to know what I mean by that. It's like, not quite Fall Out Boy. It's not quite Bring Me the Horizon. It's that kind of level, right? They only released one album, as far as I can tell, Waiting for Sirens.
Yeah, no, they don't seem to be.
I think they are defunct. In fact, I say album, but
Yes.
I've just opened Spotify now, and their only release on here is a single EP from 2008. So I'm assuming all of these songs, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs, are basically the soundtrack of this movie.
It does appear that way, and everything when you Google "Waiting for Sirens," all that comes up is a different song by a different band called "Waiting for the Simon's Call."
Yeah, by New Order, right? Like, that kept coming up when I was looking for Sirens. It's like, how shit of a band do you have to be, or how unnotable of a band do you have to be, that you have quite a distinctive name like Waiting for Sirens, and yet some random New Order song pops up whenever anyone Googles for it. I mean, I guess if they've been defunct since like 2009, then they're probably, they're not producing any new stuff, so, it's a shame. I hope they went on to other musical careers, because the pop-punk lifestyle was not for them. But yeah, it's a very weird and jarring kind of opening scene in that sense, because the music just really doesn't fit. Man just got out of prison, is reflecting upon his life.
I especially like that. Like when he gets off the train, he just sort of wanders around Southampton for a while.
Yeah, there's a lot of filler. Because that's the thing as well. Because we actually do get a little bit of a opening credits before this, which is like the shot of the beach. Like pans across from the sea to the coastline.
Yeah,
and that has like more what you'd think.
Oh, that's Ventnor Seafront. Yeah.
Yeah, and that has more like da, 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 kind of music over it, like score. But obviously, no one scored this movie. They've got that from somewhere.
I do love the title sequence that's like straight out of late noughties, early 2010s YouTube.
Yeah.
Where it's just Death and Ventnor in flames, and then there's like the gunshot.
Yes, that's great as well. But little pro tip for anybody just considering making a feature film and has no real experience in doing so. You don't need an opening title scene and 5 minutes of your protagonist wandering about on the train. Combine the two. You can have the names pop up as your protagonist is wandering around the city. That is perfectly fine. In fact, I'd encourage that. Just saying, because now we have like about 10 minutes of movie where nothing has fucking happened apart from a man has got onto a train. However, something's about to happen because he then rocks up at Colin's flat. It is Colin,
yes.
Isn't it? Yes, okay, good.
Colin is the best character in this film.
He is played by the director. What do we think to his acting? Because we should say Colin is a hardened criminal.
He is, he's a sort of hardened, hard as nails, badass kind of character.
Yeah.
He's he's the good criminal, basically. I think is the point. Like, Billy's supposed to be the incompetent, shitty.
And possibly.
Guy. And then you've got Colin, who's Colin. So Colin's got a weird voice. He's a hardened criminal character.
Yes.
And he sort of opens the door. Is like, "What the fuck are you doing here?"
Yes. And I did like this exchange. He goes, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And Billy goes, "Well, you said if I was ever in the area." And Colin just goes, "Well, I don't fucking mean it." And that's what I mean. There's some nice bits of dialogue in this movie that are genuinely quite funny. But again, like there's no real spark to any of the acting. There's no, like, these two don't really have any chemistry, but they spend the entire movie together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, it's really written really well, and like if he'd have sold it as a script and maybe like done a few revisions or whatever, you probably could make a quite good sort of dark comedy out of it. But the fact that it's made so badly is just kind of part of the charm, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was at this point that I started thinking, what in the world am I watching? Because we do go into the flat and we meet Colin. Billy stays with him for a bit. We also meet Colin's wife, who they hate each other, seems to be the vibe. Well, they're constantly bickering. And I was at the level where I was like, this is almost a completely offensive and derogatory portrayal of the working class. I know they're supposed to be hardened criminals, but there's a lot of humour in these scenes where it's like, for example, Billy asks Colin, "Oh, how many kids have you got?" And Colin goes, "What's his wife called? Is it Chantel or something like that? Like, it's something very...
It's like Cheryl or something.
Cheryl, yeah. He goes, "Cheryl, how many
one of those common working class names."
Yeah, he goes, "Cheryl, how many kids have we got?" And she goes, "What, between us?" Which, it is funny, but it's also a bit like, oof. There's some very 2009 cliches in this movie, I would say.
So how many kids you got then?
Oi, Cheryl.
What?
How many kids have we got?
What, between us?
Yeah.
6.
Yeah, 6.
Are they all in the children's home?
Barry and little Colin are both in Feltham.
Maureen's a heroin addict in Portsmouth.
2 little ones are in foster care.
Kieran's in the home. Right.
This was the time when chavs and chav culture was very much in the mainstream, right? This discussion of like...
Yeah.
Yes. The zeitgeist.
The zeitgeist. It's sort of like it. I mean, you're supposed to think all these characters are just like scum, right? But apart from like Billy, I guess, who's a bit naive and just a bit stupid.
Yeah, and he was in Care. He was in Care, don't forget.
Oh, for God's sake. Yeah, that's another thing I'm going to come back to, because in researching this, one thing I found out was the guy who plays Colin, and who is also the writer and director, worked with people who came out of Care for quite a while, and that I think and inspired this movie somehow, which we'll get into when we get into the care home.
That explains a lot, because there is a lengthy digression into a care home, which has no business being in this movie, doesn't need to be in it at all, apart from it kind of affects the ending. But at the same time, it's like, because you get to know, well, I mean, we're jumping around a bit, but you do get you do get to know the staff of that care home way more than you need to.
Yeah, like they're all such weird characters, and I think probably the worst and most offensive bit is like one of the characters walking through a corridor, and you just like see some people who are like mentally ill, I guess, or something, and they just sort of go
yeah,
and it's like, oh, that's what they're like, you know.
Those mentals.
Red googly moogly. Education, boys.
Yeah. So we should say the reason they go to the care home, which is in VENTNOR, is because Colin's mentally ill son Question mark. They need to visit him, basically, is the idea. And the way his son's
he's
mental
like
illness...
some kind of psychopath or something.
Yeah, exactly, because they say he's a trouble child. They say he tried to burn down a crematorium or something like that. He's got arsonist problems. He also likes to shoot bow and arrow at toys.
He likes to burn things down. And he's what the fuck? Oh god, we'll get to the climax later.
Yes,
but
I have thoughts
we've
on
got,
that.
like,
He's very.
So we've got.
It's very. We need to talk about Kevin, but stupider. So Colin and Cheryl are going to go and visit Colin's son, who we also it's implied, I guess, is not Cheryl's son, but that's unclear. Because they say about how many kids have we got between us, sort of thing. So there's clearly multiple kids on both sides of this. That's irrelevant. Don't worry about it. So Billy is like, "Can I go with you to visit the care home?"
Okay, right.
Which is a weird move on Billy's part, in my opinion. Like, just stay at the flat. What are you doing? Why are you going?
I don't know. Would you? I don't know. Maybe it's like, oh, we don't want to. I mean, his whole thing is that he's a criminal who's just been escaped from prison. So I guess maybe it's like, oh, maybe they don't want to trust me to be alone in their flat.
Well, it's interesting.
Although I guess they are friends, mate. But I don't know.
It's interesting because he says to Colin, "Oh, can I come with you?" And Colin's like, "Oh, I don't fucking know. Ask Cheryl." And he goes, "Oh, Cheryl, can I come with you?" And she's like, "How the fuck should I know? Ask Colin." And then Colin's like, "I don't give a fuck. Yeah, come with me if you want." So it's a very weird scene where it's just like, they actually could have done with a line of dialogue where they're just like, "Right, well, we're going to Ventnor tomorrow, and you're coming with us because we don't trust you around the house." Which again could be played off as a joke because they're criminals anyway. So it could be like, I'm not having one of your kind hanging around. And he's like, "You're a fucking bank robber and all." And he's like, "Yeah, I know. So I know what we're like," sort of thing. I mean, not to give script notes on a film from 2009, but
it is. Yeah, it is a bit of a weird thing, I guess. But I guess it's. I don't know. I think the point is supposed to be that like Billy's so dumb, but he's really loyal and he wants to be like with Colin. So it's like, oh, we're mates. Let's hang out.
Yeah. And as we do learn, because they bring it up several times, Billy was in care himself. So maybe there's an element of nostalgia for this.
That's a really weird element. Do you want to get into that? The whole like, I'm in care or I was in care running joke.
Yeah, so it's a running
what
joke.
was that about?
They bring it up 4 or 5 times in the movie, and so what we should say is that Billy and Colin, right? Just to kind of gloss over some plot, and we can get into this, right? So they go to the care home. There's a post office across the road. Billy sees that the pension money gets delivered on Monday night, and he's like, "Fuck, we could easily rob the post office." Colin's like reluctant, but goes along with it. So there's other stuff going on, but we'll get into that in a minute.
We'll get to that in a minute. I want to talk some more about the weird class stuff.
Yeah, but the only reason I bring that up is so that people are following along with us, because they won't have seen this, so we've got to make sure that they're following.
Yeah, I'm going to drop some clips in as we go, I think, just so it's clear, because obviously no one's going to have seen this.
No one in the world has seen this. So yeah, they keep bringing it up over and over. There's like a running joke. Whenever Billy is criticised for being stupid or doing something a bit dodge, like punching someone out or something, he will respond with something to the effect of, "It's not my fault, I was in care," or words to that effect, right? So yeah, I was kind of like, because it's funny at first, because I will say the first time they do it is like, he brings it up to the care worker out of the blue. He's like, "Oh, I was in care." Or he brings it up in the car, and he was like, "I was in care," and then he brings it up, and it's almost like, it's kind of funny because he's like over eager to be like, "I was in care," but then it becomes a running joke that he brings it up whenever he does anything stupid, and that's what it kind of becomes like, what are we trying to say here, movie? Because
what are we saying about orphans?
yeah, I mean, it's very odd. Because
Especially considering that, like, we later find out that the reason Billy was in care is because he was abused by both of his parents. Which is
yeah,
fucked.
right, yeah. Yeah, although that line did genuinely get a laugh out of me when he says to the care worker, "Oh, my dad used to hit me and my mum," and she goes, "Oh, he hit your mum as well." She went, "No, my mum hit me and all," which it's dark, but it's funny, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. There's a lot of that kind of stuff in this movie where a lot of it doesn't land. Like the whole I was in care running joke doesn't quite land, right? That's kind of the issue with it. But I think they overdo it is the thing. And also I don't think they're quite sure what the joke is supposed to be. Because it kind of starts off with being like, oh, he never shuts up about the fact he was in care. Like he kind of brings it up too frequently and Colin's like rolling his eyes at him. But then it also becomes
Yeah, it's like he's just a weird character bit, and then it later becomes sort of a... Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, that's something that is kind of running through this movie a little bit. There is this like weird classism angle where I don't think it was necessarily intentional, but they portray criminals in a way which is very coded towards class, with the exception of Harry, I suppose. Because Harry is he's like, oh, he loves art and painting, and he's very like, he's always pontificating about philosophy and stuff like that. But like, yeah, all the other criminals are very much like stereotypes of the working class. Because we should say, the subplot that's bubbling away under all of this is that there is another plot to rob the very same fucking post office. Can you believe it? Because, well, you remember we mentioned the quantity of ecstasy.
There was a quantity of ecstasy.
Now, I was confused when I was watching this because I thought the guy who stole the ecstasy, who is just some random pillhead, I thought he was going to turn out to be Colin's son. And that was how the thing was going to kind of tie up. Not so.
Yeah.
Not so. It just turns out they were going to rob the same
It's just some random guy. Yeah.
So he meets with Harry's enforcer, whose name escapes me. But the enforcer has another brilliant line where he said, because the pillhead is rolling a cigarette when he meets him, and he goes, "There's only two places. My father told me there's only two places where you learn to roll a cigarette: prison and the navy, and I ain't no sailor." Which I thought was Statham levels of excellent.
You know, my dad used to tell me that there's only two places that you learn where to roll a cigarette. One's in the Navy, the other one's in prison. And I'm no sailor.
Yeah, I mean,
He is that character is again like one of the people who's having the most fun, like the Scottish guy.
Yeah, he's Scottish, isn't he? I gave him a Statham voice. I don't know why I did that. See, because Hardman lines just turn into Statham in my head. That's the thing.
That's fair. Right, okay, just before we move on, I just want to make like a couple of points about the weird class things in this movie.
Yes.
So like in the first scene where they're in like Colin and Cheryl's flat, right, within like a very short period of time, they have multiple shots of like close-up shots in the foreground of like a few cans of special brew.
Yeah, I did write that down, but I forgot to mention it. Yes, yeah.
And they've got like a pet snake. Like, what's that about?
Yeah, I'm not.
Just, like, they
That's
draw attention
right.
to it weirdly. It's like, oh, it's they don't like show a shot of the snake, so they obviously didn't have one.
No.
But it's like, why bring it up?
Yeah, no, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, the special brew was notable. Yeah. It's almost like the scene was sponsored by Special Brew.
Because that's what the working class are like.
They love Special Brew. They do. Which is
They
weird.
do. They're alcoholics. That's why.
Which is weird because I mean, this is maybe like they're just getting their cliches mixed up. But I've always known Special Brew to be a cliche of like, and I don't think this is true, listeners. I'm just saying this is what the cliche is. That like that's what homeless people drink because it's cheap and it's very strong. Rather than it being like a working class thing per se. And that's kind of what I mean about this movie. Like, there's a lot of stuff like that where it's like, are they trying to do this cliche? 'Cause it's a bit wonky. Like, that's not, like if I was going to do, you know, if I was a hack and I was going to write like, they've got cans of drink, to indicate that they're quote unquote working class. I'd put like Stella or something like that, right? Like that would be the go-to, or Carl, or Carl.
I mean, the thing about like Special Brew is that it's supposed to be like the cheapest alcohol, but it has the most like alcoholic content, right?
Yeah, which is where the homeless people cliche comes in, right? Because it's like, you know.
Yeah.
Cliches aren't usually true, though, listeners. So just bear that in mind.
No, that's fine.
And also, if you're a bad writer, then cliches are very useful, obviously. But as visual shorthand.
Now, I was just gonna say, fun weird bit of Isle of Wight knowledge. For some reason, they go on the car ferry across to the Isle of Wight from Southampton, which takes an hour, as opposed to just the passenger ferry, which goes from the same place but takes like 25 minutes. And it was just really weird and annoying to me because it was like they didn't come in a car; they walked. They actually walked in Southampton to where the ferry terminal is.
They do do then pull up in a car though later on.
Yeah, that's how they're getting back. But I mean, like when they're going over.
Oh no,
they're
wait!
being picked up
No,
from the
hang
ferry
on.
terminal by the.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, when they get on the car ferry, they don't have a car because later on they have to steal one. Like it becomes a plot point. Yeah, that is fucked.
Yeah.
What are they doing? What are they playing at? Anyway, so this movie is classist and it's wrong about travel.
That's the two main takeaways from this film.
But anyway, to get somewhat back to the plot, the Scottish guy, who I thought was Jason Statham-esque but is actually Scottish, takes the pillhead to see Harry to explain himself. Yes. And Harry is the crime kingpin and VENTNOR, I suppose. He seems to be portrayed by a middle-aged eccentric homosexual. When we meet him, he is... I mean, feel free to drop in, your friend has the gay condition here. Which if people have listened to Kino Inferno, they'll know.
Your friend has the gay condition.
Yes, anyway, we're introduced to him and he's like, he's painting art and stuff like this, and he's like... Harry is my favourite character, because it is a crime boss written by someone who has absolutely no idea what crime bosses are like, and I fully support that. Because watching this movie, and this is something that bugs me in a lot of gangster films in general, right? And it was glaring in this film. It's when you see the crime boss and you're like, hang on, I have to believe that this person keeps their entire gang in line just through their own force of charisma or force of power or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Harry is certainly an interesting character, but I don't believe... I mean, I know he only commands like 3 or 4 blokes, as this movie implies, but I don't believe that Scottish guy is taking...
we can talk about the Henchmen in a minute.
Yeah. Oh, yes, we need to talk about the Henchmen. But I don't believe that Scottish guy is taking orders from Harry, is all I'm saying. Because Harry looks like a frail old man, and the Scottish guy looks like he could, I mean, he's Scottish, he knows that about people, you know what I mean? Like, speaking of cliches. But like, yeah, they portray it as like this Scottish enforcer character is like intimidated by Harry. And in fairness, Harry is a psychopath. He does torture people with a lobster, a live lobster. Because we should say Harry lives on a houseboat.
Called Derek. It's his pet or friend or something, yeah.
Yeah, so he literally just opens a hatch in the floor of the
I don't think it's a houseboat. I think it's like...
Oh, I thought it was a houseboat.
No, I think it's like a room at the end of the pier or something.
Okay, maybe it's a room. I don't know about this nautical shit, all right? I'm team landlocked, all right?
Oh, we have to acknowledge though that I wrote 3 times in my notes in all caps, why is the sound so bad? And I think the tippy top of that point has to be the bit where they like go and get the lobster pot from the hole in the floor and like pull it up, and it makes this sort of like water pouring noise that's clearly like either like downloaded off of like someone searching in YouTube water sound, or it's someone who's like poured some water into some other water in their sink and then put a microphone next to it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like actually amazing that this is in an actual film.
Well, you say this isn't an actual film.
Someone thought was alright.
Matt, this isn't an actual
Well, no, but
film.
like the fact that someone was like, "Yeah, that'll do. That's alright. That's what water sounds like."
Mate, this whole film is that'll do. I mean,
Fair.
like, and yeah, we should have mentioned it earlier, but the sound is fucking awful. And you best believe when Waiting for Sirens fucking kicks in, you cannot hear a single line of dialogue being said in any of the scenes where... Because they clearly just recorded the dialogue off the camera mic. Which, look, little filmmaking pro tip for anyone listening to this. Get a separate mic to the camera. The camera mic is never good. It's not actually there to be used. It's there so that you have a reference for syncing up sound later on. That's all it is. And most of the time, when you're recording with like even an SLR, you're recording it with it on mute anyway, because no one uses the camera mic. It's a piece of shit, and it's pointing in the wrong direction. So that's just a little bit of rage that I had towards this film. Please get a please get a directional mic, and please point it towards the person who's speaking. Or indeed, if you only have the money for one boom mic, that's fine. Just hang it over the scene and tilt it. Tilt right for the person who's on the right. Tilt left for the person who's on the left. That will do. It will sound better than this atrocity. Because nothing betrays a film more than shit sound. Because even if the visuals are good, which they aren't in this movie, to be clear, but even if they were, the sound being bad just gives it away as like an amateurish project straight away.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, I have heard that like sound is the most important element, and like if you've got bad sound but everything else is good, it sort of fucks it.
Yeah, because if you can't hear a fucking word anyone's saying, then it's a problem. Especially if you're not a particularly especially if you're not a particularly visually competent filmmaker, which is my polite way of saying this film also looks like shit.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So okay. We want to talk about. Do you want to talk about Derek? I guess, or do we want to like keep sort of talking about Harry and his really weird thing about like he's into art and he's painting his mother, but he's like, it's my mummy.
Gareth, do you know Whistler's mother? No? Well, this is my mother.
Boss, it's a masterpiece.
Do you think so? I mean, do you really think so?
Aye, it's better than your last one.
My last one?
Of your mum.
My mother?
Your mother. Your,
My mummy?
Yeah, your mummy.
Exactly. Gareth, how is your mummy?
I don't know.
Oh, she had such high hopes for you. Where did it all go wrong? I mean, here we are. You have to decide who to steal from. And no one ever steals from me.
Yes, it's very weird. He insists that his mother be referred to as his mummy, which is odd. But
And then he sort of like takes the piss out of the Scottish guy for like saying, "Oh, it's your ma." It's like, my ma.
Yeah, it's very strange.
What the fuck is this film?
And I don't know what that joke is supposed to be. Like, is the joke that Harry insists on the word mummy being used, or is it that he's taking the piss out of the Scottish guy? I just don't know. But the point is, Derek is presumably used to remove the testicles of people who wrong Harry, because we learned that he's recently hospitalized somebody else. They say his name's Bill or something, and they go,
oh, it's like oh, Baz. No, it's like, oh, Baz in hospital. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, everyone calls him Baz in hospital these days.
yeah, which again I quite liked. But, yeah, so clearly he uses Derek for punitive measures fairly often. But look, the point is,
Oh no, actually, because they say Baz in hospital got in hospital because they put some headphones on him and played some loud music.
No. Oh, is that right? I thought it was because no. Hang on, not to school you on this, but I'm pretty sure what happens in that scene is they play the Pillhead Baz's screams as he was being tortured.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Which is still kind of a weird move. But they put the headphones on him to
Yeah.
be like, this is what happened to him when Derek had a go at his anus and balls.
Yeah, so he just threatens the pillhead, whose name I've forgotten.
We can just call him.
just sort
We
of-
can just call him the pillhead. He's an ecstasy
Okay,
casualty.
let's-
That is his entire character. He's an ecstasy casualty.
Okay, so he plays the ecstasy casualty, and then he sort of threatens him with Derek as if he's gonna. But he's obviously holding him in like, as instructed by like a fisherman or someone they actually told to like hold it, because obviously they don't sort of band the claws up, so it's got its claws out. But it's obviously holding it in a very sort of tentative kind of this lobster. I don't want this lobster to fuck me up sort of way. And they just sort of wheel him on an office chair towards this guy holding the fucking lobster.
Callous, Fate, Derek.
Yeah, it's not.
Which is one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
It's not terribly convincing, is it? Yeah, I mean, it's clearly a lobster that, like, I don't think. Well, I was going to say it maybe belongs to somebody, but yeah, it's probably just a lobster that was caught that day and then used for the film. Yeah.
Yeah, they probably just like know a local fisherman.
Yeah, and probably.
And like, the Isle of Wight, I think, is known for its like crab and lobster fishing.
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they probably just knew a guy was like, can I have a lobster, please, when you catch one? I'll give you 50 quid for it. Or something.
Well, I do know that the post office used in this film is the director's local post office, and they literally just
it is.
They literally just asked, "Can we be in this? Can we just be filming in this post office and pretend to rob it?" So presumably, the woman behind the till in this film is the woman who works at the post office, rather than an actor that they got in. I would assume, right? Which again, filmmaking pro tip, probably best to get an actor in. Even if you're filming in a post office, an actor will be better at acting, generally speaking, than someone whose day job it is just to work at a post office. No disrespect to our postal workers, they do a great job. I'm just saying, not many of them wander into films and become Oscar-winning actors, is all I'll say about that.
Okay.
In fact, most of the extras in this film are piss poor. Even by the standards...
They are just people they got off the street.
Yeah,
clearly.
even by the standards of the main cast, the extras are fucking awful for the most part. But yes, we should say...
Right, so just before we move on to...
No, I was just going to say, yeah, so we should say, for anyone who's playing along at home, the pillhead decides he is also going to rob the post office. Because, well, it's kind of... This is a point that I wasn't too clear on. Was that his idea? Or did Harry put him up to that? Because the Scottish guy and the rest of Harry's crew turn up to rob the post office with him. So is it just like they're going to get $4,000 out of that anyway? Or what? Like, what's the situation there? I was confused by that.
I think it's sort of like they put him up to robbing the post office, and then they're like they're there so if he doesn't rob the post office, they'll kill him or something.
Right, okay, sure.
Or they'll fuck him up or something.
Sure, okay, right. That makes a certain amount of sense.
But yeah, so basically the setup of this, it's a farce, I guess, is they're both going to rob the same post office at the same time, hijinks ensue, I guess.
Weirdly, it's very much like a Coen Brothers movie. Like, it's all these idiot characters who are just like...
Right, so
fate kind of brings them together, that's the thing. And I will say,
like,
Billy. Sorry, but I will say Billy deciding to rob the post office is quite random because he just kind of looks at the post office. He
sees money.
Yeah, and he's like, "Money, have money, good. Must take." It's very strange, especially given that he's
like some old lady picking up her pension and is like, "Oh, post offices have money."
Yeah, which is strange as well, considering he's supposed to be like the idiot character. And it's strange that Colin kind of goes along with it as well. He's like, yeah, this sounds like a good shout. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite make sense. I mean, it feels like, having read the interview a little bit with the director, it does feel a bit like he had the idea for a post office heist, and then kind of works backwards from there. It kind of shows in the script, because there's no real reason why Harry would be particularly interested in the post office as a place to rob. And also, presumably with his connections and his kind of Godfather-like presence, if he wanted to just skim off the top of the post office, he could just go in there and skim off the top of the post office. Like, he doesn't need to heist it necessarily. But because I thought, again, this is me like writing a better film as I was watching it. I thought what it was going to turn out to be was like the post office was some kind of front for Harry's mob. Like, they were maybe like stashing some money or stashing some drugs there or something.
Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then the other two would kind of bumble into it, and like suddenly we're on, we've got the pillow who's like, fucking hell, it's all kicking off. Like, which is kind of what happens, but not really,
Yeah. Yeah, I think... I'm not sure what was going on there. The whole Harry setup is weird. Like, obviously the room they use like for his like hideout or whatever was just like a room they had access to, because it has really weird like personal stuff. Like, like in one corner of the room it has like 3 like mannequin heads with hats and sunglasses on.
Yeah.
And just like obviously the easel and
there's
stuff.
absolutely no set dressing occurring in any of these scenes. They're just shooting.
Oh yeah, they're just as they are. Yeah.
Apart from a few cans of special brew in Colin's flat.
Yeah, which I suspect probably was just the director's flat or like his mate's flat or something.
Yeah, and they just all had a few cans of special brew before filming, I guess.
Oh, and don't forget they had a big bag of crisps as well.
True.
Next to the coffee table.
Well, that is what the criminal classes do with their spare time. They just drink, smoke cigarettes, and have crisps. That's it. And then occasionally rob a post office.
Yeah, that's what they're like, the working class.
Yeah, that is what they're like.
Right, okay, so before we move on, we want to talk about the henchmen, because they are, like, we've talked about the Scottish guy a bit. I love that, like, both... I really wanted more, like, between him and Harry, because I was like, well, this is really weird, but, like, they've both got weird moustaches, and they look kind of similar, and I was like, maybe, like, they've like, it's his son or something, but there was nothing interesting like that.
Again,
he's obviously...
You're
like,
writing a film that they weren't making. Like, this film doesn't have things like that in it, like character development or interesting revelations. It's just a series of events that eventually ends.
Right. Yeah, so the Scottish guy, like, I think in some scenes he is like actually genuinely intimidating. Apart from the bit where they have the day of the robbery, and the scene just starts with him playing the bagpipes on the pier for no reason. Because he's Scottish.
Well, I can tell you why that is the case. It's presumably because the guy who played that character can play the bagpipes, and was like, I could do this in the film. And the director was like, sure. Because that, again, this is another real thing that occurs in like films made of this budget and skill level, is they'll just include stuff that the cast can do, whether it's relevant to the character or not. So if someone can play the piano, get them playing the piano. That's something, baby. Like, in this instance, obviously we're dealing with the bagpipes.
That's fair. Okay. Yeah, and it's like, oh, are you Scottish? I guess.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we've got him. He's your sort of tough guy enforcer, like right hand man kind of character. And then you've got like the bald guy in the sunglasses who I don't think has any lines, or if he does, they're like "yes, boss" or something like that.
Yeah, I think he maybe says "yes, boss" once, but like, yeah, he's mostly mute. He's just this like big hulking guy with sunglasses on.
But that's the thing; he's not even that big. He's just a normal sized guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's big relative to the Scottish guy, who's like fairly scrawny, I guess.
Yeah,
they were clearly trying to go for the the archetype of like the hulking dude who like unquestioningly follows like the mob boss's orders. Like,
Yeah,
that's like a trope.
for sure.
That's like a trope that they're trying to play into.
So the only thing I could think of when watching his scenes was that he looks like he's like one of those fucking people on Don't Pay, We'll Take It Away. He looks like one of those fucking
He looks like a bailiff.
who's like,
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he looks like a bailiff. He's like, yeah, you owe the landlord like 400 quid, so get out.
I'd just like to take a moment to just say, fuck bailiffs. Like, if that's what you do...
Oh, yeah, no, they are...
If that's what you do for your profession, fuck you. Like,
they are the scum of the earth.
If I had a son, little Aidan Jr., Henchbrain Jr., I'd be like... And he came to me and he said, Father, I'm a bailiff. I'd honestly be like, I'd rather you were a mobster, honestly. Like, I'd rather you were just honest about your criminality.
Yeah, that's fair, yeah.
Sorry, I decided to get political. We don't normally get political on Kino Inferno because we're on the sheep in the parks, I thought. Get in there.
That's all right. That's fair. And there is, of course, the final henchman, who is Harry's driver, who is the one who drives him in the Bentley. And obviously, that guy is just the director's mate who happened to own a nice car.
Yes.
Because he drives him to the other characters, and then they get in a shitty car, and then the like actual car chase stuff happens. So they just knew a guy who had a nice car, who drove the mob guy to the other people, and that was the only interaction he had.
Yeah, and clearly, you know, he wasn't going to have his car be involved in any car chases. So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Likewise, I think all the cars they, like, steal, quote-unquote, in the film are obviously just all owned by people they know.
Well, yeah,
which is why they don't actually steal the other nice car in the film.
Yeah, because that is like a weird bit, right? Where there's a nice car, but then they end up not stealing it. Like,
yeah.
It's very... I don't really know what they were going for with that scene. It's bizarre.
It's like they obviously had permission to film in that car, but the guy didn't want them to actually, like...
drive it at
damage
all.
his nice car.
Or drive it in any way. Because they don't even drive it.
Or drive it, yes. Yeah, so.
They don't even drive it. They just get in and discuss driving it. And then Colin's like, no, you're a dickhead. Let's get a crap going.
Yeah, because the whole... Like, there's a running joke where Billy says, oh, I can break into anything I can. And then it turns out that he's actually really shit at stealing cars, so Colin has to do it.
Yeah, it's funny stuff. Anyway, we should try and remember where we are in the plot for people who are following along. So, the long and short of the heist sequence, if we can call it this, glossing over the ins and outs of it, is that Colin and Billy show up to rob the gaff. Unfortunately, the old senile inhabitants of the Isle of Wight are confused about what seems to be occurring. Which, to be honest, this was the only scene in the film where I was like, do you know what? This is probably exactly how it would play out if you tried to rob this post office. Is that there would be general confusion as to what was occurring before anyone really realised, oh, we're being robbed. A policeman who happens to be on the beat shows up at one point. One of the least convincing policemen I've ever seen in fiction, to be honest. The uniform that he's wearing is... I mean, he's like a skinny guy, but he's tall, and that uniform doesn't really fit him. So clearly...
Yeah, it's just they might know a local cop who lend them his uniform for the film or something.
He gets shot in the knees and is never heard from again. The mobsters also show up. Again, sorry, just to round back to the policeman. Because I thought that was going to be like, oh, right, the heat's really on now because they've got the mob after them. They've just shot a cop, so they've got the cops after them. But correct me if I'm wrong, the cops never show up again. They're just there for that one scene, and then it's like, it's not even them, it's one guy who happens to come into the post office at the right time, gets shot for his troubles, and then never heard from again. And it's like...
Yeah, and he says, oh, they shot me in the fucking leg. And the post office woman's like, no need for that language.
Yeah. And it's like...
What's going
Why introduce the element of a cop coming in and taking a bullet to the knee if that's then not going to affect the rest of the plot? It's very... Again, this script it has its moments, but it needs someone to go over it and be like, mate, get rid of half of this shit. Like, let's whittle this already 95-minute film down to 80 minutes, please, for the love of God. But yes, we should say
Right.
the mobsters turn.
So, speaking of whittling things out, sorry, no, you go ahead.
Were you about to tell a member of Kino Inferno that this podcast is running long because you know how we
No, not at all.
you know how we roll, Matt.
No, I was just going to say we've gone a bit far ahead, and there's a couple of things I want to come back to. But feel free to
by
finish
all
your
means,
point.
if you're slowing the podcast down, let's do that. Let's go back a little bit. What did you
Okay.
want to say?
Right. So, first of all, I want to talk about the Gun Salesman, who's
Okay, yeah, sure.
his primary character trait appears to be that he's a pervert, and he rips Colin off by only giving him one gun and gives him like a fake second gun.
Yes.
But like, I think this character is just like his whole thing is like watching people dogging, or like he is dogging. I don't really know what counts as dogging, to be fair. If you're in another car watching with binoculars, are you engaging in dogging, or are you sort of dogging adjacent?
I would say you're not dodging, you know? Like, it depends how long you watch for, I suppose. Like, there's a subtle difference between just seeing a thing and, watching it. Or what I'm saying is there's a difference between seeing and ogling. You know what I mean? You can see a nice pair of tits but not be ogling it. Or indeed a nice pair of testicles, whatever floats your boat. And not be ogling it. But there is a difference. And I think if you're watching from a car with binoculars for an extended period, for what it appears to be all night, I think you're dogging at that point. I think you've crossed a line into dogging.
There's a couple over there having it off, and the car next door's watching them. Public decency, don't make me laugh. Usual terms, Colin. Use them and it's double.
I ain't used one yet. Cheers.
Makes you fucking sick.
It's a bit like if you when you go for a piss, like if you shake it more than twice, you're playing with yourself. It's like that, right? There's a certain point where the functionality of just observing what's around you becomes you're deliberately watching two people fuck in a car.
Yeah.
So pro tip for doggers as well as filmmakers then.
I just wanted to like bring him up because I think he's an example of like he's a good example of what they try to do and sort of with mixed results throughout the film, which is introduce like characters for one scene where they make like one joke, or they have one character trait or something, and then they never appear again. So later on, you have the guy who like steps in the piss from because one plot point is that Billy's like constantly needs a piss. Which becomes a plot point. But yeah, they introduce these like one-off characters who appear in a scene like to get punched or to like do something wacky, like jack off over people having sex. And I think this is like quite a good. Like, it's quite a funny scene. I think that the guy doing it does actually give like quite a good performance as a pervert.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely mixed throughout the rest of it. Like you've got a German character whose thing is that he has a caravan and doesn't know what a full English breakfast is.
Yeah,
which doesn't work. And then
it's an odd scene that goes on for an interminably long time. Yeah. Well, you've got characters like the weird hippie who turns up towards the end as well. I know.
Oh god, yeah. We'll talk about him like at the end of the film, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that sort of stuff where, like, even the Pillhead's girlfriend is kind of this, right? Like, she turns up for one scene, and is never really heard from again. Where she's basically like, before he goes to rob the post office, she's like, "You'll never fucking do it. Oh, you're a cunt, you are." And that's another scene.
Yeah, and then there's like another girl with a pram who he runs into, and then she's like, "Oh, you cheated on me. You fucking pillhead," or whatever. And yeah,
because that's what the working class do, Matt. They take drugs and they cheat on their spouses.
All right, Gareth.
All right, Debs. All right, Compton.
Not seen you round here lately?
No, I've been busy.
Oh, busy.
Yeah.
Busy like you was with Claire Edwards.
Yeah.
Wow! Wow! Wanker!
Fuck off!
Sounds like a good Saturday night, to be fair.
Steady on. We don't condone drug taking.
Right. So
or-
should we talk about?
Listen,
the,
Matt. We
the care
can't
home?
gloss
'Cause
over
that's
that.
the other sort of group
We can't,
of
Matt. We
really
can't.
weird people.
We can't gloss over what you've just said. I want to be abundantly clear. We do not endorse cheating on your spouse, whether you're under the influence of drugs or not. Okay? In Minecraft.
No, I'm joking, mate.
In Minecraft. In Roblox. In Lego City.
Okay. Fair enough. Right. So, do you want to talk about the care home people? Because well, just start off. We've got. Should we just sort of go over each of the characters because they're sort of small pieces of a larger whole. So we've got the main.
Yeah.
We've got the main lady who's like the acting manager or something, and her whole thing is just being exasperated. And
Yes.
yeah, you've got.
And she
like,
became
the
the
weird...
acting manager.
Sorry.
Because the previous manager was a nonce, and this is made abundantly clear in the dialogue.
Yeah, and I don't know why. I don't know. It's like, oh yeah, the previous manager was like, I think the line is something like, come and sit on my knee and I'll touch your balls or something.
Something along those lines. And then one of the people is like, they never proved it. And then one of the guys is like, well, they fucking will. He's going to court. And that's it. That's it. It's like, okay. Not sure why that was necessary. Because it's not really relevant to the plot that this woman is the manager. Let alone the acting manager who became that way because the previous manager was a nonce. Again, it's the kind of thing where, as someone who has, both watched a lot of movies and, written a few, I was going like, okay, this is going to become relevant at some point. They're bringing this up because this is seeding something that's going to happen. Maybe at some point, Colin and Billy will have to hide out in a building, but oh no, it's a courtroom and they're at the nonce's trial or something like that. But no, nothing happens to that effect at all. It's just brought up, and that's that. Dismissed as quickly as it's brought up. Very weird. But yes, the other members of the of the gang at the care home. Go.
Yeah, so sorry, we should probably bring up that this care home appears in 2 or 3 scenes ever. So there's no point for us to have any of these scenes meeting these characters, other than the fact that the director used to work in care and therefore has, I guess, some grievances about the sorts of people that work in care. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that is entirely it. He just wanted to, because there is a social worker who appears, or a care worker, whatever the term is, the one that Colin talks to about his son, who is quite clearly written as a vicious parody of care workers, to the point where it's interesting because I didn't know the background of who used to work in care, but when we were watching it the other day, me and my partner, we were both like, fucking hell, this feels like someone's airing some grievances. It's so specific, and so he portrays that woman as such a drip, that it's this must be, there must be something to this. There's too much bile behind it.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I'd actually compare it to? Do you know the League of Gentlemen, the comedy show?
Yeah.
Do you know Pauline, the job centre worker? You can tell, without even knowing the backstory of that character, that it was written from a point of view of fucking hating a specific job centre worker. And it's that's the vibe I was getting from these care home scenes.
Yeah.
It's oh, these are real people that this person has an issue with.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you can see that with most of them. Apart from the manager and the guy who's constantly talks about the noncing.
Yeah.
Who I don't know why that character exists.
None of these characters need to exist. None of them do.
Well, anyway, should we just talk about that guy?
So there's a guy who works at the care worker place, the care place. He is the one who brings up that the old manager was a nonce, and his whole attitude seems to be utter contempt for everyone around him. So that's fun. I mean, he doesn't really have much more character than that, right? He's just kind of...
Yeah, no, that's his only contribution. We've got the younger woman who, like the director, obviously has a problem with people like her, and it seems to exclusively be she has a degree.
Yes.
I'm not.
Yeah, right.
Like she's like always, constantly talking like academic talk, I guess.
Yeah,
and
she's always bringing up like kind of like Jungian concepts and shit, but in the kind of like in a way that clearly implies that it's all drivel. She's also at one point looking for her phone charger, and that's like presented as if that's a joke or a character flaw. And I thought that was kind of funny. I just wrote down in my notes, "Goddamn millennials," and left it at that.
It does certainly seem that way. But like that bit really sort of like confused me, because it's like in a care home where you're working with like, well, it seems to be for people with like mental health issues and disabilities and stuff. It's like surely you'd want someone who was like qualified in that area. No one else seems to be competent at all. But this one woman is like, she talks about the complex things, so she's a dickhead.
Well, the thing that's interesting about that is I think it's like it's kind of something that's died out a little bit as a prejudice in the UK, kind of, where there did used to be a thing, 10, 20 years ago, possibly before as well, where like it used to be a bit of a cliche for like, sensible blokes to kind of complain about like overeducated graduates like joining the same fields as them and like immediately getting promoted and stuff like that. So like it's one of those things where it's a cliche that isn't really used anymore, because nowadays the cliche is like people having useless degrees and then going to work in McDonald's, which is a cliche because it's true, because this system is broken. But that aside,
capitalism bad, as it turns out.
Yes, like maybe it's not the degrees that are useless. Maybe it's society ? We've both become the Joker. Moving on. What are the other characters? Is that all the characters in the care home? Because I'll be honest, for the care home sections, I did sort of start looking at my phone. Is that the extent of all the care home characters? Because I'll be honest with you, when I was looking, when the care workers came on screen, I sort of stopped looking at the screen. I was like, well, this isn't going to be relevant to the plot, so I can just like look and scroll through Facebook for a bit.
Yeah. So obviously there's the other character that we only get introduced to in the climax is some other weird like drip character who's a bit of a wimp, and is like, I think the joke is he gets bullied by the children or something, and then they like take him hostage and make him do a piss.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That did happen.
Yeah.
So
it's a sort of classy film we're watching.
So
right now.
as you can tell, these care worker characters are very well developed characters. They have a lot of screen time for characters who are basically not relevant to the plot. Because we should say, when the care workers are first introduced, they are introduced at length. Like this acting manager character, you like see her turning up at work. She's like chatting with the other care workers. You get a sense of what their dynamics are amongst themselves. And then Colin, Billy, and Cheryl show up. And it's like, right, so these are clearly going to be important. Oh, no, wait. They're not important at all. Like,
yeah.
The care home comes back because obviously when Colin...
That's the climax.
Yeah, the climax. Yeah. Colin and Billy end up there after being on the run throughout VENTNOR. So we've probably bamboozled the audience a little bit because we've jumped around the plot quite substantially. But getting back to the roughly linear nature of it, once they rob the post office, there kind of isn't really any plot for the rest of the movie, outside of the fact that the mobsters want the money. They don't want the mobsters to get the money. They steal like 5 cars in a row or something, and they try and hide out in various places.
Yes, basically like... Basically, I think what happened is the film was too short, and then they're like, oh shit, we need to add a bunch of shit.
It's like
in.
very, you can tell it's very like the film is like very artificially extended for most of the second act, because there's no clear like, okay, we've got the money, we need to go to this place. It's just like, oh, we wander up to a car, we steal a car, we drive somewhere else. There's a truly bizarre digression when they get to a petrol station where, for some reason, there's a bloke, like, it's like a big hulking bloke outside playing a banjo, in the style of like Deliverance. Like I assume that's what the reference is supposed to be, which is a very interesting film for Death in Ventnor to reference. Because, well, I mean, I'm sure people know Deliverance, but if they don't, it's about a bunch of people who go white water rafting and then like they get kidnapped by hillbillies and awful things happen to them. Trigger warning for that movie. Good film, but slapping a big trigger warning on it. When I say awful things, I mean awful things. But it's a very weird reference. It comes out of nowhere. But then, they try and rob the petrol station and it goes wrong because the woman behind the counter just refuses to give Billy the money, right? And then the dude playing the banjo outside is like starts beating Billy up, but then Colin beats him up and then they leave. And it's like, what's happening here? Why is this scene in the movie?
Basically after they rob the post office, they try and escape, and then like the ferry gets cancelled, so they have to go to a different ferry. And it's
thrilling
like,
stuff.
It's basically just hijinks ensue as they try to escape. It's like the Odyssey, but worse.
It is like the Odyssey in so many ways.
Homer was missing a trick, if you think about it.
Homer Simpson.
Yeah. Before we move on, I just want to we are going to move on with the plot, but
no,
I just want to be like,
we must not.
The social worker character, like at one point she just like starts going on about how ADHD like is a thing that only children get.
Yes.
I was like, what?
Yeah, and then because Billy claims he has ADHD, and then the care worker's like, only children get ADHD, and he's like, well, what happens when they grow up? And she goes, I don't know. Now, I also wrote this down because, again, it was one of those lines where it occurred to me, like, this is a gripe that the screenwriter clearly has. Like, this is something he's clearly annoyed by, and I can't tell whether it's the ignorance of the care worker that he's annoyed by, or... Because, again, this is 2009, so do remember that the cliche at this time was that ADHD was, like, overprescribed. Like people were kind of, it's not a real thing, it's just naughty kids misbehaving. Which is still kind of a thing now, but like that was a very, very prevalent belief at this time. So it's kind of hard to fully pass what the meaning of that scene is, whether he's like satirizing the ignorance of it, because obviously it is very common for people to talk about children with ADHD, but then obviously adults grow up to still have it. Like it doesn't get cured magically by age, you know. As soon as you hit 18, it's like, I can focus now. But so that I thought that was an interesting line, kind of thrown in for no reason, and I'm not sure how I feel about Billy having medical diagnoses when he's being portrayed as like comically an idiot. It kind of feels like, what are you saying about people who actually do have ADHD? Because that is a real condition. Like, it's kind of fine to be like, a character's dumb and leave it at that. You don't then also have to be like, oh, and they've got ADHD, by the way. Because then it kind of feels like, well, are you saying that people who have ADHD are dumb? Question mark? And
there's both options are bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, I was okay with accepting that Billy was just not the brightest bulb in the pack. Like, you don't need to... I mean, then again, I guess they are doing this whole thing of like, oh, he's in care, and oh, he's a delinquent, I guess. But like, so, I mean, we were talking about the ideology of this film, such as it is, but there definitely is some undercurrents that I don't think are necessarily the best.
Yeah. I like that whole scene, to be fair, is like weird because that's where some of the most like fucked up stuff gets said, but it is also where some of the like some actually quite good jokes come in. Like, I think like the soundbite I think that I might keep using is there's a bit where they talk about like giving the children drugs, and it's like, oh no, that's bad, and it's over prescription, but like but they're like, oh, what does that drug do? It's like, oh, well, it calms him down and makes him more sociable. And then Billy goes, oh, what, like lager? England! Like,
Yeah.
And then Colin just turns to him and goes, shut up, you twat. Which, honestly, as a soundbite, is great. I might keep using
I think you should. I mean, if people want to know about English culture specifically, I think this film is the one to watch, really. Like,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Because that whole scene is, I think it's indicative of all English people, to be honest. And notice I'm very carefully saying English people.
It's called Ritalin.
And what does that do?
Calms him down. Makes him more sociable.
What, like lager?
Shut up, you swat.
What, are you saying that the portrayal of Scottish people isn't accurate?
Based
on the bagpipe playing gangster.
I would say no. And I think the portrayal of German people is even less accurate.
Oh god, yeah. Yeah. Okay, right. So
we've jumped around the map.
On.
We've jumped around the map here.
All right. So after the robbery, they basically get chased all around the island.
Yes.
They get into hijinks. They meet all these weird characters. Like at one point, they stop and Billy needs to have a piss, so he does a piss in a phone booth, which I don't even know is a thing that people outside the UK would even know what it is. But it's
people have phone booths.
Yes.
People have phone booths.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Cool. But anyway, it's like is it like a red phone booth? Anyway, I can't remember. But Billy just does a piss in it, and then there's another character who comes in, and it's like, oh, I haven't got any signal. I'm going to have to use the phone booth, and then steps in the piss, and it's really funny.
Yeah.
And then they take him hostage, which is weird, because like, why didn't they just steal his car?
Yeah. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, why do they need to take hostages if they're not being pursued by the police, is a question that I had. Because the reason you would take a hostage after a heist goes bad if you're being pursued by the police is so they don't shoot you, because you've got a hostage, like, and you can force them to negotiate. Whereas if you're dealing with ruthless mobsters such as Harry, I don't think they give a shit if you've taken a random person hostage.
And they've shown that like they're capable, well, semi-capable of stealing cars. So
Yeah, like, why
there was a
not?
guy
Yeah.
who left his car. Why don't you just steal that car?
I mean,
you
at
know?
this point in the film, we were about an hour in, maybe over an hour. So I think plot logic, you've just got to accept it's not really there.
Yeah. Oh, another Isle of Wight thing I wanted to bring in.
Sure.
They end up going to the other side of the island to get a ferry from Yarmouth, which is weird because I, in my opinion, the best thing to do would be to go to Portsmouth and get the hovercraft over. No, so go to I think Shanklin and get the hovercraft over to Portsmouth, and then you can from Portsmouth you can get like a train to Southampton or something, which is like what they're trying to do. Well, so that was weird to me.
I mean, I will say, if you're planning on a heist of any kind, it probably shouldn't be reliant on a train. Like, you should maybe have a car waiting for you in Portsmouth in that scenario. Like,
well, you can get to Southampton from Portsmouth fairly easily. It's like the next town over. But
you'd probably get there
easier.
Get there easier in a car, is what I'm saying.
Well, no, I know, but I'm just saying that you need to get like the whole plan is that they need to get back to the mainland, because when they get back to the mainland, they're fine. They're trapped on the Isle of Wight is the problem, because there's only like a couple of ways you can get off.
I understand that, but the plan is still too reliant on a train.
Okay, fair enough.
Because trains do not run on time, typically, in this country. I know there might be people listening from foreign countries where the notion of a train turning up on time is just the generally accepted thing. But in this country, trains don't arrive on time. Public transport needs to be factored out of any of your potential robbery plans. Just if anyone's planning a heist and is just listening to this as they do plan the heist, if one of the points of your heist let me try that with English words. If one of the points of your heist plan is get on train, just cross that out. Cross that out, baby.
Okay. Right.
Even an Uber would be better.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. And the middle bits is just a bit shit. So this is where Harry gets involved, and they pick Harry up and they go on the chase. And for some reason, Harry brings along Derek. In the car, and I think he at some point he says the line, "The world's your lobster."
Yeah, which is a great joke.
Because because Harry's just like, his whole thing is lobsters. That's his gimmick. And the whole thing is the Pillard is scared of Harry because he is just a terrifying, crazy person, to be fair. And yeah, and then we get to the okay. So the main reason that the climax happens in the care home, which is like it is established but very poorly earlier in the film, which is that Colin is diabetic and forgot to bring insulin with him.
Yeah, see, you said this was established, but I did not register that at all.
Yeah, so like there is a scene where Colin is administering insulin to him in a previous scene, and that's it. That's the setup. That's all. So they have to go to the care home to steal Colin's son's insulin.
Yes.
So that Colin is fine. We have a really weird. Right, yeah, so that's why they end up at the care home, and the gangsters end up at the care home as well because they're chasing them down, and like the weird, creepy twins who are like a reference to The Shining are the Scottish guy's daughters, and they say, "Oh, there's scary people here with guns," but the characters are obviously written to be about 10 years younger than the actors playing them are.
Yeah.
So it's like you've got like two what looks like 15-year-old girls on the phone being like, "Oh, there's scary men with guns."
Yeah.
It's like,
and also, this is another one of their very random film references. Because like we mentioned Deliverance earlier. But also, yeah, like you say, there's two twins, because they do appear earlier, but yes, they play into the plot at this point. They're just creepy twins, referencing The Shining clearly. Although not dressed like the girls from The Shining, but obviously referencing that scene. But for no reason at all. Because they're not actually creepy, they're just some twins. Although, I did note down, the Scottish guy seems to refer to them as just one name. So it's like he refers to them as like one entity. Which
I think it wasn't supposed to be like the one who was on the phone or something.
I was unclear about this because I actually thought that would be a pretty funny joke if it was just like they just have a one name, they're just like one thing to him.
They're both called Chantel.
Yeah. But yeah, that's weird. I mean, we should also say that the title of the movie is a movie reference. It's Death in Venice, right? Which is an old movie about paedophilia. Not really. I mean, I'm being glib there, but that's kind of what it's about. I don't know why they referenced that for this crime film, but fine, whatever. I guess Ventnor sounds a bit like Venice. I guess that's
I think that was literally it. Yeah, I think probably what happened is that they came up with the title of the film first, and then they came up with the post office heist idea, and then they wrote the rest of it around that.
Yeah.
So they were like, there has to be a post office heist, and at least one person has to die.
I mean, the director did admit in this interview I read with him that the name came before the premise of the film, so there's that. What I will say about that is this is another filmmaking pro tip, yeah. I just want want all any aspiring filmmakers who are listening to this, or screenwriters for that matter, film students especially, you need to hear this. No one gives a shit that you've seen other movies. Okay? Like, fair enough. Sometimes there are points where you can reference some other movies, or you can, homage your particular influences, and it seems, it kind of makes sense like that. But like, no one needs in this movie a reference to The Shining or Deliverance or anything like that, because like, we get it. You've seen other films.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And these are not even films that are relevant to the genre that this film is parodying, pastiching, however you want to look at it. Like, if there are references to The Godfather or to, Reservoir Dogs or something like that, like, that would make a certain amount of sense. But the references are all just kind of random. There's not so many of them that it's overbearing, but it is that thing of like, I guess there's a guy just like playing the banjo in the style of Deliverance here. That's a thing that's happening, I guess. Like, yeah, it's bizarre, but that's a personal bugbear of mine. No one gives a shit that you've seen films, okay?
Okay. Right, so I guess like how the climax sort of comes together is our two protagonists they go to yeah, they go to pick up insulin for Colin, and then, like, they sort of, like, get stuck there. Well, they take a hostage for no reason.
Yeah, once again, these are not... I think the idea is that these are supposed to be incompetent criminals, but they're incompetent to a point where you have to question the logic a bit, because clearly both of these guys have done a fair amount of crime in their time, right? Like, they established that Colin has been behind a lot of robberies, but he's always...
Yeah, Colin is supposed to be, like, the competent criminal, and Billy's supposed to be the idiot who's, like, holding him back or whatever, but it turns out that Colin is also really bad at crime.
Yeah. And, like, that could be funny in its own right, of, like, you know, Colin's an incompetent criminal, but, like, Billy doesn't realise it because of how, you know, how naive he is. But again, that would take a slightly defter hand at the typewriter than what we have here. Because the problem with this kind of, like, this level of clumsiness in the writing is, like, you can never tell what's intentional and what isn't, you know? Because Colin's constant need to take hostages could be just an element of, like, oh, he's you know, he's trying to be harder than he really is, or, like, he's trying to be this kind of tough criminal, but really he doesn't know what he's doing. He's constantly panicking. That could be really funny in the right hands. But, like, here it's just kind of like, oh, I think this writer just thinks that when robberies go bad, you just take hostages for no reason. Or, like...
Yeah.
Or, like, even the element of they're constantly stealing cars doesn't really make sense, because it's like, well, if you were doing a robbery, would you not have a getaway vehicle? Like, that seems fairly basic to me. There's, in fact, several crime... If you want to reference movies, there's, in fact, several crime films that entirely revolve around getaway drivers as a concept. Like, this isn't... You know what I mean? This is not, like, new information. Like, if you are trying to make a film within the crime genre, like, maybe it helps if you do a little bit of research into either true crime or, like, the cliches of the genre. I don't know. This is just me... I don't know. This film, it got to a point towards the end where I was like, my tolerance for this being a low-budget amateur film is wearing thin. Like, I need a little... Like, because this is feature length, you know what I mean? Like, a short film, you could maybe forgive some of this stuff, but, like, this is asking me to give up an hour and a half of my time to watch. And, like... Yeah. But anyway, yes, we are so close to the end, so yeah, why didn't you take us home, Matty, with the plot?
Okay, so, like, when they're in the care home, they take 2 hostages for some reason. And then the gangsters show up, and then everyone dies for no reason. I think, like, one character just gets hit by a car.
Yes.
Randomly. Colin's son just goes killing everyone with a crossbow that he didn't have before. I was confused when I, like, watched it this time, because I was like, Colin goes in and takes his insulin and gives him 20 quid, and I was like, oh, go buy some sweets or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, did he use that to go and buy a crossbow? Is that what happened?
I don't think it matters.
But it happens it happens in all very quick succession, but, like...
Yeah, because we do see him practicing with the crossbow at one point.
Oh, yeah, okay, and I forgot about that bit.
Yeah. Where he got the crossbow from, I'm not entirely sure.
Right,
but this is where my reference to we need to talk about Kevin comes in, because he does go on a crossbow killing spree at the end, which is kind of...
Yes.
It's not similar to Chekhov's gun as a, like, oh shit, we need to end this movie. Oh, fuck, who can kill everyone? I know. The Psycho Son. And it's like, okay, sure. So the entire reason you introduced the care home was so that you could have a crazy person, quote unquote, who can just kill everyone with a crossbow at the end. Like, I get what they're going for. They're trying to go for this ending where, like, everything converges in on one point and everyone ends up dying in rapid succession. But because they're not clever enough, frankly, as writers, to kind of think of, like, ways that each individual character could get finished off that would be kind of funny or ironic or dramatic, they just have one person kill everyone, pretty much. Like, I know this one guy gets taken out by a car, but it's like no one gets, like, I was expecting there to be, like, at the very least, I was expecting Harry to get a karmic death involving the lobster.
Yes, I completely.
So I was like,
agree.
you've had this
Yeah.
you've had Chekhov's lobster this entire movie. Like, come on.
We'll get to that, but like, yeah, it's it does just feel like they decided to call the film Death in Ventnor, and then they were like, oh shit, we haven't killed any characters yet.
Yeah.
What the fuck do we do now? And then they just sort of like kill everyone within like 2 minutes or something.
And I think one thing that was quite telling in the interview that I read was the director does say that he hates gore in films. So I was kind of like, okay, is this what we're seeing here? Where he's like, well, all these characters need to die, but I don't want there to be too much violence. So it's just going to be everyone's just quickly hit by a crossbow arrow and then they're dead. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no like set piece deaths. It's just like everyone dies in rapid succession.
Yeah, it was really it's really jarring and weird. I mean, I guess the only two like the only person who survives is Billy. I believe.
Yeah, no, Billy gets out because then he goes and finds.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if anyone else does. But...
No one else lives, I don't think. Or maybe Colin's son does, but I can't remember what happens to him. Because the thing is, also as well, like we're struggling to remember this because it happens so quickly in the movie, and they don't really linger on like who's been killed or not. Like they just go, everyone's dead, right, moving on. And it's kind of like, oh, okay. Like literally, as I was watching it, I had to go back and be like, so hang on, who's dead? And it seems to be that everyone apart from Billy is dead, or at the very least, incapacitated by a crossbow bolt.
Yeah. So like the main sort of climax builds up to the confrontation between Colin and Harry. And
by the way, two characters who have not interacted up until this point.
Yeah, I think at one point Colin just says, "Who the fuck are you?" Yeah. It's like two absolutely random. But yeah, Kieran kills his dad, and then I think his last word is something like "you twat" or something. And then like Billy runs off. But like. They have like during this showdown or whatever. Colin like points a gun at him, and Harry just sort of gets Derek out.
yeah.
It just gets and then we get the best line in all of cinema, which is Colin just saying, "I can't stand crustaceans." Then he just shoots him in the head.
Yeah.
Gareth here tells me there's been a little mix-up. Just hand over the money and we'll forget all about it.
Don't wave that thing at me. I'll blow its fucking head off.
Colin? You alright, mate?
I can't stand crustaceans.
It's pretty great, but again, I kind of wanted the lobster to kill someone. I know they don't have the budget to train a lobster.
A trained lobster, now that will be something.
I was expecting at least one scene of Harry, like, I don't know, something happens, the lobster gets turned on him, and then it's like hanging by its pincers from his crotch for a bit. They could have just got a toy lobster to do this with. Like, just him running around like, with the lobster hanging off his balls, and then he gets shot or something. Exactly. It's not too much to ask for. I mean, this movie finds time for a gun salesman who's wanking in his car.
Makes you fucking sick.
But doesn't find time to give me a lobster-related death. That's all I'm saying. Even if you didn't want to show lobster-related gore, you could have at least have him fall into his own lobster tank or something, and then you just imply, you just throw a bit of red food colouring into the water and just go, the lobster's killed him. Ugh.
No, for sure, yeah. I agree. The lobster should, they make a huge deal out of the lobster, and it's like, it's this joke, it's like the lobster is this gangster's whole thing. It's on in all the marketing, it's such as it is. They should have done something more with the lobster. I completely agree. So all of our characters apart from Billy are dead. Billy drives off.
Yes.
Another weird emo song plays.
Yeah.
And then Billy comes across. We have one final hijink, in which
there's
Billy
one more caper to have. Yes.
Billy sort of comes across a weird hippie who's been on the Isle of Wight since the 70s, which, to be fair, is like most people who live on the Isle of Wight. But like, there's no reason, there's no purpose for this character other than to just have another character for Billy to interact with for the rest of the film.
Which is like 5 minutes of film, right? So it's like...
Yeah, there's like 5 minutes of film left. And then they like pull up to an airport, and then Billy like steals a plane and gets on a plane and then flies off. And I guess the point of that is like the joke is that, oh, Billy's so bad at stealing cars, but he can steal a plane. Isn't that wacky?
Yeah, and again, the fact that is the joke didn't dawn on me until the following day when I was thinking about my notes of the movie. Like, this is how badly executed that joke is, because the whole thing of like Billy saying, "Oh, I can nick any vehicle I can," and then it being like, "Oh, no, you can't, you dopey cunt." Like, it's so like poorly executed. By the time it gets, because you're right, that is the punchline, right? Is that he nicks this plane, because the guy even says, the hippie guy's like, "Oh, do you know how to fly one of these?" He's like, "Nope," and then he just jacks it and flies off. Like it just doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a bit of shit. I mean, the whole thing with the hippie guy is bizarre as well. Like, why does he need to be in this other than he's clearly the director's mate? Like, you know.
But yeah, then like the film ends with like a 5 or 10 minute sequence of Billy flying in the plane.
Well,
that's the end of the film.
You say Billy flying the plane.
Well, someone flying the plane.
There is a pretty there's a pretty obvious cut to not Billy flying the plane, and then the plane being in the air. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was Kino. That was Kino Inferno. That was Death in Ventnor. What are your thoughts on the film?
Well, if you ask me what my thoughts were whilst I was watching it, it was mostly, why is Matt doing this to me? I think in terms of... Right, 'cause I should say, for the benefit of the listener, I've been to a lot of film festivals, or a relatively large amount of film festivals, I guess, for the average person. And when I say film festivals, I don't mean ones where actual films get shown. I mean ones where, you know, whatever shit people have made on an amateur level gets shown. And this film definitely has all the hallmarks of the worst of those festivals selections, right? Like, it's very amateurishly made. There's like an ambition there that cannot... It's kind of that... There's that perfect intersection between ambition and laziness that you get in amateur films like this, where the film itself is a little more ambitious than it should be. Like, this didn't need to be a feature film. You could have had a 20 to 30 minute short about a heist at a post office that goes wrong, and that would have been perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And you could have used all your best material from this, and that actually probably would have been quite good. As a feature, it doesn't really work, because it also has that element of, like, yes, they were ambitious enough to make an entire film and have several locations and have all this kind of stuff, lots of actors, big casts. But there's that laziness of, like, well, we're not going to bother trying to get actual actors. We're not going to bother trying to raise any money for this. We're just going to shoot where we can. The shooting itself is pretty bog standard for the most part. There's a few nice shots here and there, but for the most part, it is clearly just the director operating the camera and operating it not particularly well as well. So, you know, it's one of those things where I'd be lying if I said it didn't have its charms. But considering... So this is a comedy. And I kind of agree with Mark Kermode that my rule for a comedy is, like, for me to consider it an effective comedy, I need to have had 5 big laughs. And I don't really think I had 5 big laughs in this. I maybe had 3, possibly 4. And they were very spaced out from one another. And, you know, mostly that was at the dialogue, but a couple of those would be from just general badness of the film. I will say, I can see why you're so fascinated by this film, because it's it has that thing that maybe like The Room does, where you can sort of see a little bit of where the creative process was coming from, but there's also all these questions of like, why did you choose this? Why lobsters? Why the, you know, there's that kind of element of like, I can sort of see if I squint what you were aiming for, but like how it's gotten to this weird, messy place, I don't know. But, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Because you've said this is kind of like, this is almost a favourite of yours at this point.
Yeah, I think this is, for me, this should be a cult classic, like one of those so bad it's good movies, like The Room. And there's a lot of charm to it, I think. You can definitely tell that like the people who were involved in this were having a whale of a time. And they were just like, you know, passionate about it. And, you know, I do respect it coming through, but obviously it is an objectively badly made film.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way around that.
I don't think it quite has that thing that, because you know that I'm an aficionado of Who Killed Captain Alex, which is actually made for even less money than this was. And I think that movie kind of carries itself through just on pure enthusiasm of everyone involved. And I think this movie has a touch of that, but I do think there's maybe like a 15 to 20 minute stretch of this film that is just tedious. And I'm kind of mostly thinking about the second act, really. All the stuff of like, oh, we need to go to this place. Oh, we need to fuel up. Oh, we need to get another car. Like, all of that stuff is so like, oh, just leave it. Like, if this was like a 40 to 60 minute thing, I think I would love it as much as you do. I'd be like, this is hilarious and amazing. But there's all this extra gumph that just kind of glues up the works a little bit for this movie for me. Where like, and again, this is kind of the thing you always have with these movies, where if you're watching these kind of very low budget, very like borderline amateur productions, there is always this element of like, well, you kind of have to take the rough with the smooth, right? Because these are not people who really know how to write and direct a film, you know? So there's always going to be that element of like, there's going to be plot threads that go nowhere. There's going to be obvious setups that don't really get payoffs. And all that's fine, but again, I just think my main complaint with this is runtime, really. Like, if you could cut this down and just take out that middle act entirely and just have them be forced to go back to the care home and just have everything kick off straight away, I actually think I'd really like this. Or I'd like it on the level that I do something like Captain Alex, where it's like, it's not really a movie, but it's like, it's kind of made with such gusto that you can't really deny its charms, you know? Whereas I think because they tried to make it feature length and they tried to kind of, you know, reach that a little bit further, it just kind of sullies it a little bit, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. That's absolutely, I mean, before we finish up and we sort of plug your podcast one final time, is there anything else that you didn't bring up? Anything you made notes about that you sort of want to just briefly bring up here?
Let me check my notes. That's probably copyright. Can't have that.
Okay.
Death in notes. No, I think I've pretty much mentioned everything that I wanted to mention.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, that's all I had about this masterpiece of a film. Thank you for sharing in it with me.
That's okay. That's okay. I mean, I guess I had fun.
Well, I've had a lot of fun. But yeah, do you want to talk about Kino Inferno a bit more? Just at the end, just sort of we've basically done now. We've given our conclusions and our PSs, and just tell us about Kino Inferno and why people should listen to it and follow you on all your social medias, which we'll link in the description and the pinned comment.
If you've enjoyed this in any way, but you were thinking, I'd prefer it without Matt, but with a bisexual man from Lincoln instead, then that is what Kino Inferno is. It's this, but without Matt and with a bisexual man from Lincoln. I don't know how to sell it any better than that.
He's an actual writer, isn't he, actually, Mark? He actually knows what he's talking about. He's got a proper job.
Let's not blow his trumpet too much. No, I shouldn't say that. He's going to listen to this. But so we've sorry, fuck me, I don't even know what to say. Hang on. yeah, so serious talk though. If you have enjoyed this in any way, and I hope you have, because if you've listened this far in, then and you've not been enjoying it, then I don't know what kind of masochistic existence you're living. But listen, Kino Inferno is available on Spotify. It's on YouTube. It's everywhere basically at this point, I think. It is just two guys talking about films, some of which you've probably seen, some of which you've probably never heard of. But basically, if you're in any way interested in film and film discussion and just kind of getting into that nitty-gritty that we love to get into over this stuff, then, and also if you don't mind us saying the word cunt about 5 times a second, then...
It's okay, you're British, you're
yeah,
allowed.
it's part of our culture. Then this is the podcast for you. Please listen to it, because we need enough listeners that we can open a Patreon, because we say cunt every 5 seconds, so YouTube will not monetize us. So all of season 1 is out now, so that's the thing to say. We are currently working on season 2, on and off, but we kind of have a couple of bonus episodes that we've released recently, because what we do when we can't be bothered or we've not got a proper episode ready, is we do like a franchise overview, which we call the Aidan and Mark versus episodes. So recently we've done Aidan and Mark versus Scream, for example, and our most recent one was on Wallace and Gromit, which came out this last Friday. So go and check that out. I kind of want to say check that episode out, but I'm also like, if you've not been listening to the pod up until that point, that episode is going to be one of the most impenetrable to listen to, just because we are very off topic in that one. Okay. But it's a funny episode, but I would honestly recommend... obviously I want you to start with episode 1 and listen to the entire thing, but I would say start with the Cats episode. If you like that, you'll probably like the rest. Cats seems to be the one that we get the most correspondence about, because it's people love that movie and hate it in equal measure, and me specifically, I went into intense levels of research for Cats. So
yeah, I think that was my favourite one, primarily just because you had such an in-depth level of knowledge about the film Cats 2019. And you were obviously so bamboozled by it that it was just a delight to watch, honestly.
Yeah. We also, in that one, because obviously we talk about 2 films every episode, we do also briefly touch upon the 2000s Phantom of the Opera movie, the theme there being Andrew Lloyd Webber adaptations. But yeah, it's mostly known as the Cats episode because we talk about Cats for 2 hours and 20 minutes or something, and then talk about Phantom of the Opera for a little bit at the end. But yeah, so that's probably the episode that I would recommend people start with, and if you like that, work back. Yeah, I think that's all there is to say. Obviously, we're at Kino Inferno on YouTube, Kino_Inferno if you want to see Mark's tweets. I'm not on Twitter, I can't stress that enough. Yeah, we're around. Just check us out. So yeah, thanks for having me on to plug my shit.
Well, thanks for coming on. I've had a lot of fun, and I enjoyed inflicting this film. Well, I enjoy inflicting this film on anyone I can, but especially people who I know will have opinions about it. Yeah, I've enjoyed having you on. It's been a lot of fun. I do, as I was saying off mic, I do also have copies of other films if you do want to talk about it again. For example, I do have a copy of the 2017 film Triggered, which is about a serial killer who is a blue-haired SJW.
Well, there you go. I mean, I do want to see that film. I am aware of it, so I guess Watch This Space will probably do this again at some point. Yeah, no, I think that's all we need to say about Kino Inferno, and well, do you want to sign off, Matt?
Fair enough, yeah. Thanks so much for coming on. To everyone who's watching, if you're still watching at the end of this, obviously you enjoyed it, so all the links and everything to Kino Inferno will be in the comments. If you want to see more of this, I guess we can maybe do more of this. We said we were going to do more streams and then we never did, so we might not end up doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, as some I feel like maybe I owe your audience an explanation for that. I think with the streaming, it's definitely something we can go back to at some point. I'll be honest, I am the problem when it comes to the live streams. I very much enjoyed doing our Smudboy arc. I thought it was pretty funny and good. I think pretty much everything we suggested afterwards, because we did talk about doing Lord of Patriarchy's books, which are very funny. I read his life advice one. But also, with him, I kind of almost feel like he's got a lot of like mental problems, and I felt a bit bad doing what we did to Smudboy, who deserved it.
The thing is with Lord of Patriarchy as well. Like his book is like 10 pages long, so you can't really do much with it. Also, we also looked at other books. Like I downloaded a bunch of like weird red pill books. I was like, oh, maybe we can like read some of these. They're just cringe, but they ended up just being really dark and horrible.
That's things where when we were looking at Ben Shapiro's books, which are now very well covered anyway. I was looking into some of them, and they are it's just a bit much, you know. Like to do several streams for several hours on the ramblings of Ben Shapiro, like that would not be pleasant for me personally. Anyway, I know you're more used to battling the political opinions of the internet. But I think the Smudboy thing, because for some reason I'd got obsessed with Smudboy's ramblings, it was almost like it was therapy for me more than anything. It was like, I need to exercise these demons.
For sure, yeah, and obviously that was about movies, so it was like it was more of a light-hearted, you know, you can talk about films, you don't have to actually like go into politics, whereas the rest of the stuff we found were just sort of really dark and horrible and depressing. So
But you know, and like I will say, like Kino Inferno is not totally apolitical. We do talk about our genuine political views every now and then. But yeah, I think we're both of the mindset like we want to talk about things that, by we both I mean me and Mark. We want to talk about things that kind of bring us joy, you know, that spark joy, rather than
for sure,
than anything too negative. Which is not to say like you shouldn't cover those things. It's just kind of like what we wanted our brand to be was like you can have a little break from that and like, you know. That said, in the Wallace and Gromit episode, we do have a good old pop at Little Englanders and UKippers for a good 20-minute stretch of the episode. So you know, if that's a selling point, check that out.
Okay, right. Well, thanks so much for coming on. We might do this again at some point.
We might do
in the
live streams
meantime,
at some point, but we'll have to find something that.
But in the meantime,
something that sparked the need to do it, I guess.
That's absolutely fine. Well, we're IRL friends, so like you know, we can just meet up and suck each other's dicks if we want.
Well, maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, in the meantime, if you want more content like this, go and listen to Kino Inferno. It's a fantastic podcast. Like, unironically, like not even just because you're my friend, it is like genuinely a really entertaining, really fun podcast. I used to listen to it at work, and then I was told to stop. but I really enjoy it a lot, and I recommend everyone go follow it. As I said, all the links will be in the pinned comment and in the description. So thanks so much for coming on, and this is the end now.
Goodbye.
That's it.
Goodbye, everyone. Bye. Shout out to Riot Fox.